All right. I wish you all a very happy new year, and I welcome all of you on behalf of IASNM MISI webinar series. This is a live webinar series. The session is going to be a 45-minute followed by 10 to 15 minutes of question and answer session. And during the session, please mute your phones. And if you have any questions, you can put in the chat box as well. So it is my absolute pleasure and honor to introduce Dr. Amit Kharat today. He is the co-founder and CEO of the DeepTek Medical Imaging. He is certified in artificial intelligence from MIT. He's a fellow of Indian College of Radiology and Imaging. Dr. Kharat has been actively involved in organizing multiple MSK-related courses, workshops, and he has been on the organizing committee for the National Musculoskeletal Conferences. He's also been involved in Artificial Intelligence Committee in Indian Radiology and Imaging Associates. He has a number of conference presentations and publications, and his prime area of interest is artificial intelligence in radiology. So it's my pleasure. Dr. Kharat.
Indeed, a pleasure, Saima. Thanks a lot for calling me at this event. Thanks, Amol. Thanks, Dr. Josna ma'am, and everyone. It's an honor to be at the IASNM platform and present in this series and start the new year, 2023, with the AI presentation. I think AI is a buzzword, but let's dive a little bit deeper and understand how is basically going to get deployed in the future into clinical workflows, and how and what we all need to know as imaging experts in our own fields to take the best value out of this AI. So my talk today primarily is focused on responsible AI. How do we seamlessly deliver this into clinical workflows? How we do that through a platform approach? And what are the various audits that we need to kind of understand when we deploy critical AI into workflows? So that's where my talk is basically going to move around. Yeah. So so I have been a radiologist. I've been also supporting at some point of time the radiology aspect of nuclear medicine reads, specifically PET-CT, and we typically also collaborate with nuclear medicine experts at that point of time. And also from a different perspective is from technology development in terms of AI. So kind of have the picture from all different perspectives. And as a technology platform or a tool, when we approach hospitals or organizations with this tool and reach them, I think we see typically a common set of questions from experts as well as administrators who are working very closely with experts when we talk about AI. One of the few questions that they see, and this is when we are talking about not only individual AI models, but also in terms of multiple AI models if the organization is already in touch or using. One of the most important question is the AI fair and free of bias against any population group? So that's a pretty common question that we get to kind of from various groups. The second important question is, can we explain the AI outputs in a very logical fashion? Typically, we all know that AI is more like a black box. That's what it has been categorized as. And it's very difficult to understand why AI took a particular decision or gave a particular output. And can we explain that using technology is one important question. The third important question is, can we trust the decisions which AI has been giving? So there may be some recommendations, there may be some conclusions, or there may be some heat maps, bounding boxes, outline views. So are they all logical, and are these decisions which I may have to take as an expert based on these correct? That's a third important question. The fourth question is, can we create custom pipelines for invoking different AI models? We all know that AI is kind of vast, and the way it's growing, the number of different niche AI algorithms which have been creating, and they all are going to come into the clinical workflows. How do we actually ensure that these AI models come into the workflows very smoothly, in spite of the fact that these workflows could be pretty complicated? As an AI model, they may be doing very specific tasks. They may be doing very niche tasks, but at the same time, putting them into the workflows, designing those workflows that the studies could be a plane scan or a contrast scan and a particular segment or a particular region of interest, and then a particular type of contrast. So it could be angiography studies. or it could be a plain CT scans, and that's for lungs, and that is licensed for a particular department or a particular satellite center and for a particular imaging center or for even a radiologist. All those important decisions, and also whether the solution is on premise or it's on cloud. Lastly, how can I leverage my data set for further AI development and research? And when we talk to large organizations, specifically which are research oriented, also in medical institutions, this is a very important question. How they, because we see a lot of research happening in these innovations happening in these organizations, how they can start using their data sets for research and development. Primarily, my answers today will be designed or focused to these particular areas. So coming to slightly much more deeper dive, what are the today's key challenges that we have observed in the last journey of say 5 years in this space, and from a physician perspective as well as from the user as well as from a development perspective? One is the most commonest thing that what we realize is that we all have now so much used to PACS and in a hospital. So first question is like, how do I integrate third-party AI solutions in my existing PACS? The journey typically could take weeks or months, and that's one question. Typically, when we are doing with one model or two or three models, it's acceptable that you may be able to do these off the PACS. You could use different screens or windows, but can you imagine doing that with 10 or 15 different AI models? Or maybe 100 in the near future, and all are going to assist you in your reporting in some point or other, and these models are going to come in into your workflows, and the challenge is how do we integrate with the existing packs. Second is what is the performance of the AI model starts degrading, and so on and so forth. So these are just a few questions which I have listed, and then as a AI company or maybe as an expert, I may need to talk to hospitals. I may have to work towards packs manufacturers, and I maybe also have to discuss with the researchers as to what's the vision, what's the plan in the future, and which all imaging devices are there, and what are the likely future courses. Is it oncology? Is it cardiology? It's particularly designed towards radiology, or it's something else? And all these decisions need to be taken. So that journey actually culminated into what we call as this journey for delivering this AI into the workflows, and that's where we basically came up with this solution as to how do we deploy this solution. And there we have these key components in the solution deployment, and these basically are these 6 pillars, what we call as the 6 pillars for AI delivery, seamless AI delivery or responsible AI delivery into clinical imaging workflows, not research workflows but real clinical workflows. And these are basically, first and most important concept is a model decay and model drift. So that's one concept. The second concept is fairness and explainability of the AI model. The third concept is about observation of model performance. Fourth is a trust score of the AI model. So how's the models, how much trust we can give in an AI model. Then we have this orchestration engine. That is the last point which I covered. How do I put all these AI models into my workflow, that it works on a particular sequence or a particular scan, like a PET brain or a 18 FDG PET CT scan, or so on and so forth. And how do I basically create activated data which I can now start using to create custom AI models within my organization or in my hospital, so I can start using them in my workflows to ease my workflow or reduce burnouts. So how is today AI getting consumed? Just taking a very simple example of X-ray chest, and I would like to show how AI should be consumed if at all we want to walk the journey of actually deploying AI in the workflows. First of all, we need to understand that are we really consider AI as a friend? And if we are going to consider AI as a friend, I think this journey becomes, the journey on the right-hand side becomes extremely important. So I'm going to do a quick demo about that. Typically, what happens is when we deploy AI in the workflow, and just giving a simple example of X-ray chest, this is how the output will be seen. You will be able to see the DICOM image, and you'll be able to see the DICOM image with a heat map or an outline view or some probability scores and bounding box and a list of differential diagnosis. But if I would like to consume the AI differently, so let's say I would like to, I'd like to play a video. So let's take this simple example. Yeah, where I'm kind of using AI to interact with the AI. So when I'm interacting with the AI, basically what I'm going to do is these are the bounding boxes which have been created. Let's say in this case, there is cardiomegaly, there is some lesion in the left lung, and I want to also add the lung nodule. So typically AI will come up with this kind of bounding boxes, which is the part of the explainable AI. And it can also generate these kind of structured report where the findings get added in the report. So you can imagine PET CT or a PET brain also in this example. Plus, as experts, we can custom modulate the report by changing the outputs, and you're basically feeding in correct value. So though the AI said it's cardiomegaly, you can custom design and say, okay, it's left ventricular. That also has been given by AI, but you can change from moderate to severe. Let's see that. Or you want to say there's opacity in the left lung, and there's something that the AI did not add, let's say nodule, and you could add it using structured reporting and you create a report. What you are doing in this particular situation is you are interacting with the AI. AI gave you half the report, or probably 50% of the report, or 80% of the report. It also gave you not only on the image heat maps or bounding boxes, it actually ended up giving a report to you as well. And what you did also was that you used that report, you consumed that report, and you also interacted with that report. So that is how, if at all you would like to walk the journey of doing all these, use these various tools, we are going to walk the journey on the right hand side, where you're going to use an interactive AI. In this particular manner, you're not interacting with the AI. So you're basically seeing only the output, you're generating your own report. You're not also able to edit the report in your existing packs, right? But when you use the approach on the right hand side, where you're interacting with the AI, you're not only helping generate reports faster, but you're also using that to giving feedback to the AI that AI was correct, AI was incorrect, and I consumed or I did not consume the output. So this journey is only, like today's talk is only relevant when we are talking the journey on the right hand side. Moving to the next slide. So this particular aspect of the journey where we interacted with the AI is called the feedback. So as the expert, I'm giving a feedback to the AI, and that's for improving the AI. So when we give the feedback to the AI, basically what happens can be explained in this particular workflow. So let's say these are scans. This could be nuclear medicine scans. This could be radiology scans. And you can see these scans on the left-hand side. They are basically going to the packs, or in this case, this platform, AI platform Augmento. And here there could be experts like radiologists, or it could be nuclear medicine specialists or cardiology specialists who are looking at these scans. And now they are generating reports. They will be generating reports as text reports, or they may be generating reports using smart reporting. So the smart reporting is the structured reporting, which I just showcased. And smart reporting, as you know now today, could be anything. It could be structured reporting by using a clickable format, or it could also be ChatGPT. And you know how things have been evolving and developing in this space, and we really don't know how this future is going to evolve in the next few months to years. Ultimately, what ends up is a text report, and this text report basically can be fed to a NLP, that is a engine, which will basically start deriving some kind of metrics out of these reports. Plus, through smart reporting, you can also get quantitative feedbacks. For example, there's a cardiomegaly, let's say just, or a lung nodule, which is 3 millimeters or 10 millimeters, or cardiomegaly, which is some XYZ percentage. You're getting these quantitative feedbacks, and the radiologists have accepted these feedbacks. And through NLP, you're basically will be able to churn out the AI performance metrics. And what are these metrics? The ones which I just showcased to you in the 5 to 6 different pillars. And this AI solutions basically, or the AI models, are directly interacting with the packs. So now you can get this feedback back to the AI models at some point of time. You're not changing the model. You're not doing any change to the model, because that's a custom model. It's an approved model. But now you can give feedback. So in the future versions of the models which are going to come in, those changes can be applied. So that's how the feedback loop works. And it can only work when you start interacting with the AI solution. Now, coming to the first and the important point here, which was the fairness and the bias review. So here we have different type of questions which may need to ask and need to answer. And as a radiologist, or as a nuclear medicine specialist, or even as administrator, these are the typical questions. Is the AI ethical and fair towards everyone? What if the AI performs poorly for certain groups? Will I get accuracy for images from different scanners? Three important questions. And let's start with the first. And we don't know whether this kind of information today is expected available from PHS, that is the from the DICOM data sets or from any other data sets. But this is just to showcase an example that there are a few scans which are showcased here. And in these scans, you can see that the patients, there are certain age groups or certain patients where the AI is performing slightly poorly. And in some, you're seeing that the AI is performing quite okay, or kind of okay. While then certain kind of population group like Hispanic, African, or white, the AI is performing very well. This probably also may indicate that this is kind of what kind of training data set must have gone in creating that AI. So that's one important aspect, that if we have the data sets and if we are getting this information, we should be able to understand if there is some bias of the AI based on the race. The second important question is, what if the AI performs poorly for certain groups? Let's say this as an example. For the first example, the important point is that once we know these insights, what's the value it adds? The value is that we can safeguard against intrinsic model bias, against marginalized population groups. So that's a very important insight that we can derive from this particular feedback. The second feedback is about the age groups. So we have these patients which may belong to different age groups. It could be 0 to 18, 18 to 40, which are showcased here, 40 to 60, and above 60. And then over a period of time, as you deploy AI model, let's say you're doing some lung segmentation or nodule segmentation, or you're doing a liver lesion characterization or some texture analysis, and you realize that the patient, this is the proportion of patients, that's the proportion of false positives, and this is the proportion of false negatives. The AI above the age of 60 years is showing a higher proportion of false negatives. And that set of insight is almost humanly impossible when you're going to deploy multiple AI models into your workflow. And now you need this insight. And you can clearly and easily miss this important insight if we don't have an AI audit in process. Again, this kind of system can prevent any model bias against marginalized population groups. So that's the second important thing, or the concept about fairness and bias. The third is, will I get same accuracy for images from different scanners? So let's say in a large hospital setup where we could have multiple scanners, typically we all see where this solution gets deployed is they may have multiple scanners doing the same job. And there could be 2 or 3 machines where you're doing the PET or the NAF or the even you're doing the any other scans like 18FDG or other kind of scans. And then you realize that as you're giving feedback to the AI, you are accepting most of the generated reports from AI in some form or other, text or image from a scanner A, most of them. For scanner B, probably you're accepting majority, but not a good amount. But in scanner C, you realize that significant amount of AI output is modified or is getting modified by the experts. So here the experts could be radiologists, nuclear medicine specialists, cardiology specialists, and so on and so forth. So this kind of bias, again, is extremely important to get detected. Otherwise, it could be this very subtle to detect and could be easily missed. And that brings in the important concept of fairness and bias review. Coming to a second important concept, which is model decay and drift. And here we need to basically look at 2 important questions, and which we see coming from radiologists, imaging experts, or administrators. And first, we also answered in the first slide on fairness and bias is, will I get the same accuracy from images from different scanners? And second is, what if the performance of the AI starts dropping? How do I understand this? And here again, we further subdivide this into 3 important concepts: model decay, concept drift, and prior probability drift. So let's understand these concepts one by one. Model decay is one when the AI was working accurately, but the performance had started dropping. So in the month of, let's say, July, so let's have a larger, better zoomed out slide here. Now that's a typical way in which we see the area under curve for a model performance. You see that for the month of July, the same model, and example could be anything which we are using. It could be some like renal stone detection or a renal mass detection, or a renal volume quantification algorithm was in the month of July, and the performance in the month of August. That in the month of August, the graph is more towards the right, the performance has dropped for some reason. So that's the model decay, and it may happen because of any reason. It could be some acquisition parameter change. It may be some exposure settings change in the CT scanner as well. For certain MA or certain KB setting, we never know. Ideally, the AI is typically significantly robust to absorb these performance changes, but we never know. What could be anything. It could be service related. It could be acquisition parameters. It could be the pixel size. It could be the voxels, and so on and so forth. But it may be very unpredictable. It may come in or it may not come in. Typically, when we train the AI, all these are taken care of. But that's for those unusual cases that may happen when the model decay may affect performance. The second is about concept drift. So there is a change in the interpretation of output. So here we have a concept where, let's say, the lung nodule size, I don't think that's any differentiation, but I'm just giving an example, could be 10 millimeters, 15 millimeters with lung nodule or lung mass. It could be pleural effusion, small pleural effusion versus small pleural thickening versus pleural calcification. Or it could be something else as well. For example, the way tuberculosis could be defined in different countries, just to give an example, with the lymph node, hilar, fibrosis, calcification. And somewhere they would like to include fibrosis, somewhere fibrosis is a part of old TB, and all those things, just to give that example. The third is, again, that's the concept drift. So there's a complete different, the way the AI has been trained and what's being expected out of the AI. So there needs to be a caveat as to what are the conditions which the AI will not detect. And the third is a prior probability drift. That is, the AI has been developed on a particular kind of a imaging data. So for example, lung nodule, CT, could have been developed on a CT scan, which were typically from OPD and models like outpatient department. But now you're seeing patients from ICU and OPD also getting scanned. So which studies the AI should actually work and which studies should not work. And that is again a part of the AI orchestration. The second important aspect of the orchestration will be whether this kind of studies are accepted by the AI. And that's about the prior probability drift. So as you can see, the training data set may be different from where the AI is actually designed to now work. And hence there always will be some discrepancies, and hence the feedback becomes extremely important. So identifying model decay and drift proactively and responding to them can mitigate adverse effect to end users. So these could be very subtle changes. The concept drift or the probability drift or the model decay will be very subtle. They may not be very easily visible. It may be just slowly deteriorating over a period of time. But unless you don't have a number or a figure in front of it, you may not be able to pinpoint it, and hence you may not be able to take corrective actions. And it may miss visual or visual detection, because the typical kind of workflows that we handle per day, it may be quite difficult to miss these characteristics. So that covers two important aspects. Bias has been covered, and the second important aspect also has been covered. So now we come to the third important aspect, which is after that is the explainability of the AI. So can I interpret the AI outputs? And will I know the threshold the AI uses to make decisions? And these are some really important concepts, because this also helps in the visualization aspect of the AI. So as we know, the primary DICOM image source is the one which the original image source is separate from the ones which are going to showcase the AI output. The AI output will be showcased in various manners. And the key here is to showcase in a manner which minimally affects your existing workflow. So you would like to see them in parallel in two simultaneous windows where you'll be able to scroll through them, or you would like to triangulate on the lesion, or you would like to see them only with the outline view, which is shown in white, or you would like to see the heat map view, which also quantifies and showcases the ROI, or you want a much more deeper, like explainable AI bounding box, which is helping you in report generation, and all these points, and plus the probability score. So what's the probability field from the AI for picking or diagnosing that particular condition? And that how confident is the AI for detecting that condition? So these are the different parameters which come under the explainable AI aspect. And then also comes a very important aspect called thresholding. So the thresholding will decide how many cases will actually move from the false negative to false positive bin. in terms of understanding that these are the cases where, and that again is extremely custom fit model, because as some experts, we may want not to miss a single case. So we'd like to have a slightly higher number of false positives versus where we are okay to have a kind of little miss, okay, so that you could actually do those manually, and then you would like to basically just see those normals or the abnormals first, and that's a separate workflow. So depending upon how you would like to custom design, and what we realize is that it changes as per the expert, and the thresholding hence becomes extremely critical, and at what level it needs to be set, at the administrative level or at the level of custom, it could be left to the custom level. And this is extremely important because it can make the very easy access to the model's decision parameters, allowing users to interpret the AI predictions in the right context. We know that these are context could be differential, it could be similar or simulating lesions, and what's the likely probability or the probability score for the AI to really say that it's likely that whatever lesion they're dealing with is a particular X or a Y lesion. Coming to the concept called the orchestration. So we cover the explainable aspect of AI. Now we come to the important aspect about orchestrating AI. And this type of what we realize is, as long as you have a few solutions in the workflow, this is never a problem. Like just 2 or 3 solutions. As experts, we may see a pack screen, we may get HL7 inputs designed to send passive AI into your screens, but we are not talking about passive AI. Here we are talking about actively interacting with the AI, and there could be various orchestrators you could use. So what happens if you're not using orchestrator, any type of orchestrator, and what happens changes when we start using orchestrators. So this is the orchestrator, and first of all, we need to understand where the orchestrator will sit. It may come within the PACS environment, or it will come as a separate module which will be attaching to the orchestration engine will get attached to the existing PACS and allow you to create a window appearance where allows you to context switch into a different environment where you can start interacting with the AI. So let's see that without an orchestration engine, you will not be able to create these custom pipelines. So you want to see contrast CT images. So unless and until the technologist from the scan does not push the study into this AI, probably will not be able to run, or you may end up running all your CTs through that AI model. This has a lot of impacts. It has impact on the cost. It has, because you're using GPUs for CT. It has impact on the GPU on premise or GPU in the cloud, wherever this data is going to go. And this is extremely important, therefore, to understand at which sequence as well you would like to send, you would like to optimize it to that particular level. And that cannot happen if you don't have an orchestrator, or it will happen. It's a manual task. That means you're again using bandwidth of an expert to kind of do these segregations before sending the scan. So rather than actually AI saving time, it is increasing the time and further complicating the workflows. And hence we see poor adoption. Second is it's difficult to, and what happens is that when you use this, you can now orchestrate these areas. So you can say that for a particular study coming from a particular scanner, you would now like to, only for the contrast or the angio images, you would like this to run through the AI. Now you're saving cost. You don't have to do it through a technologist who's already busy doing so many different things. And now you are able to create these workflows. It's difficult to customize AI inference pipeline for client hospital based on the specific requirements without orchestrator, which now becomes easy. And the third important is to monitor usage of AI, because at the end of the day, you may have a perpetual license, you may have using a paper scan, and whether you need to actually go with the perpetual license, but you're underutilizing your AI. So you need to move from a perpetual license to a paper scan. How do you do this? And this insights can only come when you start kind of monitoring this information and getting these insights. Coming to the last few aspects, one is about the activated data. And this is pretty important when we're talking about large organizations, which also aspire to create their own AI. We all know that there could be very niche use cases, and these may not be commercially valid. So AI companies like us, even we may not be interested, or we may not like to work. But at the same point, if there is a collaboration or a partnership happening, there's a very high opportunity for these niche solutions or custom solutions to be actually brought into the workflows. For that, the process starts in actually lot before that. So first you need to identify what's the workflow. And as experts, we all know what are the typical use cases we would like to use AI. And we all know that we have huge amount of data sets, whether it's cardiology or nuclear medicine or radiology. We contribute to more than 30% of the global data sets, whether residing in clouds or on-premise servers. At the end of the day, they just lie in silos, or they just get archived into long-term storage and they're never used. And AI and technologies like these are completely changing that particular perspective. Now you can start using the data and AI to automatically generate high quality region of interest annotations. So you just create a small AI model on a data set of few thousands, and now you can prospectively and retrospectively start annotating. So when you do a key search, you may just find studies which have that positive images or some findings, and now you know these studies there, but at the end you still have to go ahead and do the annotations. But now what happens, this kind of a solution, you can actually prospectively retrospectively start annotating your data sets, and that data set your job becomes extremely important. It happens within the system, and now you could use this data, you could label this data. You can also use NLP techniques to create these high quality labels. You can anonymize this data, and this could be done parallelly on a separate server within the same hospital premise. You could remove all important pertinent DICOM informations and metadata. You can remove all the PHIs imprinted on the image as well. You can scrub the images of all this important information. You basically anonymize the data. And then you could export this data within the hospital into a separate server, into a research server, or within the device or the development environment, where you could now start using this. Or you can also collaborate externally with external cloud, or you can also put this on the cloud for doing some processing of your data using various new technologies and concepts which are available. As we all know, federated learning is no longer just a research tool, but moving into the commercial environment where you could actually use federated learning to use this data to learn and create custom AI. And now you can start using them in the workflow. So now your data starts becoming valuable, and hospitals can really tap into this. The advantage for hospitals clearly is that this data is available with both the clinical information, the histopathological information. There's a complete detailed analysis, and this really makes it extremely rich to create very, very high level algorithms when this activated data is used correctly. Coming to the last point, which is about observability of the model, where how I can get instant alerts and do performance monitoring. So one is to get that granular data and weekly or monthly live or real-time analytics on the algorithm's performance. Now, ideally, if as an AI vendor, if anyone asks for this information, typically the AI vendors are able to publish this data after processing this offline. And that the moment you start doing this real-time responsible AI, it becomes online, it becomes real-time, and you can do performance monitoring, because till the last scan, you have this information. You can use this information now to the benefit for getting these audits. Second is, with this audit, now you can start getting instability alerts. So not only you get alerts when your machine is down, but it also gives you a lot of alerts talking about this is likely that the performance for this model is deteriorating, need to do a check, or this model has failed, or this particular study has failed to do any analysis. And all these custom feedback mechanisms can be built. And you can also now do incidence investigation, easily flag and resolve any critical outlier cases which expert disagree with the AI predictions. So whenever there are those cases where experts and the AI completely, there's a mismatch, you can now start doing the incidents. So why this AI failed? Was it because of the age group, ethnicity, any change in the servicing parameters of the scanner? Was it something like a concept drift or a prior probability shift, or it's a model decay issue? And all those things now can be done through incidence investigation on that model. And you can start basically generating value from your AI. That is, okay, I moved from perpetual to pay-per-use model. I would rather do the vice versa now because I'm started consuming more. A new machine is coming in my department. I need to factor in one more on-premise GPU, or I could move this entire to a private cloud. So this is all possible by observing the model's performance. So we started with a few assumptions, and that there are a few questions typically which administrators and experts have when they start working with AI. And then we saw that using solutions, orchestrators, and using this responsible AI, we should be able to answer most of these questions. Typically, we all know that this is, and here we are talking about mostly image diagnostics, but as this field is expanding significantly, we're realizing that there could be pre-processing of images or image processing. You may end up augmenting certain images, like from a single particular scan, you may get different type of images, completely different fusion images. You can actually showcase probably from CT and MR image, and or from a particular sequence generate 2 or 3 different sequences. You may end it for pre-screening, you may use it for diagnostic purpose, or you could do purely for analytics. It could be for predictions, may end up for classifications, localizations, quantifications, and recommendations. And now all these are going to come in your workflow one by one. And at some point of time, the only bottleneck will be how do I get them as quickly as possible, because my workload is increasing and I need a tool which actually helps me do all this progress monitoring, do it objectively, kind of augment the images where I need to, or do some prediction or analysis, or do some recommendation based on prior data. So unless and until we don't get them into the systems, probably you're not able to. And if I want to run at least every single algorithm out of these on a separate screen, you can imagine the kind of challenges you will have and how much time you're going to take to report a single case. And as we know that it's a maturing field, and all these tools are still few are in research. Many of them are now algorithms have FDA clearances, and they're coming to the workflows, and they work on different modalities. And we need to also look at all those challenges, whether they'll be on cloud or they'll be on premise. They'll be doing processing on the edge, whether these are just point solution or they are more sentinel in terms of the ChatGPT kind of system, which will be for NLPs, and whether they are just simple smart tools without AI or with AI, and so on and so forth. So that's what a tool ideally will need to be addressed in the near future if you want to start interacting with AI in a larger scale. So that's kind of summarizes my entire talk, and hopefully I've kind of clearly articulated the concepts about these 5 or 6 important parameters about how do you do an AI audit and how do you actually deploy multiple AI into your workflows. Indeed, thank you for the time, and if there are any questions, I should be happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kharat, for this very informative talk. It's very, very helpful and very, eye-opening as well at the same time. I'll open the floor for questions. I do not see any questions in the chat box, though.
Yes, Dr. Abhinav has. Amit, this is the person I was mentioning earlier, Dr. Zah. He's from Malankot. He recently gave a talk at SNM India meeting in New Delhi about AI. So yes, Abhinav, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Kharat. And thank you, Dr. Kharat. This was a really interesting talk, and very excited to see the developments on the deployment of AI end. My own work, I run a research lab, so most of my work is focused on the research and technology development for AI. I'm very excited to see the translation of these tools in the clinical workflow. My question to you related to your slides on AI with humans being in the loop, where you mentioned that the AI model is still frozen, but you provide feedback to the AI which can help the AI in sort of improving. What are the mechanisms that you imagine for this purpose?
Yeah, I think coming back to that slide, so I'll just showcase that slide for the audience to review in terms of what could be the various ways in which you actually give feedback to the AI. So basically what happens is that we all know that today that the AI which is coming into the radiology workflow primarily is driven by the AI output, which is passive, where the AI is just generating a heat map or outline view. And that's where we see a lot of frustration amongst experts. Experts are not really satisfied.
Yes.
This AI is really not working. And even if I would like to edit and give feedback, it's a waste of my time, because it's never going to be used literally in my workflow in the future, because anyway, I'm not going to consume this end result of whatever feedback I'm giving. So how do we look at the long-term scenario? And that's where we basically look at these various mechanisms. The mechanism what is feasible or possible is that through unstructured and structured data. And the unstructured data, what we're looking at is the text report, because that's the most common kind of output that is the end result out of the report generation. And now with a smart reporting or using some new tools which are there evolving faster, these tools can also be resulting in giving much more sharper, much more articulated data, which can give the quantitative feedback. These data actually will be processed through a natural language processing engine, NLP engine, and then that will drive towards this AI metrics or the performance indicator. And this basically is a very important aspect if you want to get any idea about all these various concepts. So that's the probable mechanism which we see is the right way for institutions to deploy AI into the workflow so that they are able to get the best output of whatever they are actually time they are consuming or the time they're giving into this AI development process.
So then the idea would be to take these metrics and actually provide them to the developers so that they can use it for the newer versions.
Correct. So this, as we know that AI models come in a fixed format. So once it's in a frozen state.
Yes.
So typically this will go into a feedback to create and newer versions of the systems, which actually will end up in the workflow in a future date. But at the same time, it is also important for us to understand that where these AI models are actually not working. For example, it could be a particular age group or a particular ethnicity or a particular scanner at the same time. And this is extremely critical to get these insights. Otherwise, we may get insights, but that will be only vendor specific. It will not be from the institutional perspective, which is also extremely important to take important decisions for the future.
Yeah, I think your talk touches on some very important topics, including the topic of fairness, including the topic of scanner generalizability. We call it generalizability. We use the term generalizability more than bias here. But sensitivity to different age groups. I think these are all very important criteria. And in fact, when we were designing our own guidelines for best practices for evaluating AI in nuclear medicine, the Reliance guidelines, we had actually suggested that when you come up with an AI product, you specify a claim which specifies what populations were this AI algorithm evaluated on, what scanners were they evaluated on, what image acquisition protocols did they have, and so on and so forth, so that it's very, very clear that this algorithm works on this population group and this age group and with these particular scanner configurations. Our thoughts on this were that an AI algorithm may actually may not be something that solves all problems, but it may solve some specific problems and it may do that very well. So how do you imagine AI evolving forward in the clinical landscape? Do you see it as like a one solve all, or do you see it as like solving a very specific age group or specific ethnicities?
Right. I think the way just before this talk, I think Amol asked me about how RSNA was this year and that most of the AI companies come and present. And the way we are looking at is that every time you go to the RSNA, you see the number of AI companies working on very niche products. And there are these very, very unique propositions that come out, which are unique by its own way. But if you look at a total addressable market for these solutions, may not be that big. But at the same time, they are extremely important utility for saving 2 minutes, 1 minute, 5 minutes, or some tangible or intangible benefits in the long or the short run. So these solutions, imaging solutions, as we know, let's take CT chest as a module or X-ray chest and CT chest as a module. So most of these are going to be entire module, which are likely to come, and yet they will still manage to cover only a certain subset of a disease or a kind of a group. It may not be necessarily machine specific, because ideally it has to work across different hospitals, which may use different machines. So it will not be machine specific. It will rather be more specific in terms of the various kind of pathologies it can detect. But yet, as we all know, the complexity in detecting so many different pathologies, it may end up supporting in terms of quantification, doing some kind of analysis in terms of detection for that matter, or also doing some kind of progress monitoring. And that's the way we see that the initial way in which it is going to enter the workflow, that it may end up saving 2 minutes or 1 minute here. But the cost of this is how much time some other person in the department is spending.
Yeah, exactly.
Get the data to you. And that's where the challenge, and that's why we always see a bottleneck that for some individuals in the department may save time, but for some it may increase time. For the administration, it may increase time as well as cost. And that's where it should come as a full solution, not just like a piecemeal solution. And it has to be directly integrated in a feedback loop where you are interacting with the system.
That's great.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks again for this talk. I have a few more questions, but I see some other questions in the chat, so I'll defer my questions to later if there's time.
Saima, you're muted.
Thank you, Abhinay. I'll ask Dr. Halkar's question first. So he says, great talk. At Emory, we have developed an AI tool for MPI imaging with NLP reporting and one for renal scan interpretation for obstruction. These are rule-based engines and do not use ML or neural network. We often use it as part of training tool for residents.
So yeah, it's not a question, but it's more of a comment. But what I would like to ask this question is, how or what is the best way to use AI as a training tool for residents? Because in university hospital, more and more university hospital in the US are functioning as private practice, and we find less and less time to teach the resident. The only we opted for rule-based engines mainly because if you use machine, like a neural network or things like that, where there is a black box, the reasoning is not given so easily or not apparent. So rule-based engines have all their deficiencies, and they are static in the sense whatever rule you have used, it will not add anything more or learn anything more. But as a teaching tool, it will give out, these are the logical reasons why the AI came to this particular conclusion. And if the resident can learn from that and make my life easy, that I don't have to keep on talking too much in a given day, and which we all face. And the problem, every week there is a new resident, and I have to say the same old thing again and again.
So I think this itself becomes a very interesting use case, right? Where tools like this, and that's so one interesting thing that what we observed when we use here, we also get a contrary opinion. Like if AI is coming in, then how residents will learn if AI is already giving most of the answers or giving differential diagnosis or predictions. So how are AI residents going to learn? So that's one kind of question. And there's other positive side of it, and I always look at the positive, is that with AI or machine learning or rule-based engines, you are basically making it easier even for residents as well, because we all know that it's given that the kind of workloads and the stress at every level, the imaging increasing multifold and different kind of imaging equipments coming in the department. This will just be in any other tool like a virtual assistant, which will be used by the experts to move on quickly. At the same time, add more value and quality and quantity into the reporting process. So I completely agree that rule-based engines and machine learning basically can also be an important aspect in certain use cases, and that could give these reasoning along with it as to why it came to a particular decision making and what are the different findings which are seen and what could be the insights behind those findings. And it can save a lot of time for teachers and trainers in this entire process, so that they are able to kind of decongest these workflows at the same time. And I can imagine for some hospitals, even in India, the number of residents in training for one particular batch which were like 4 or 5 have now grown to around 30 plus. So you can imagine it's like a school of 60 if you look at all the 3 or 4 years. And then at some point of time, how do we train everyone? And should we do the same repeat again and again, or we use some assistant to us? And that's where actually the AI can play an extremely good role.
Thank you. And Justin Peacock put in the chat box, great talk. We have incorporated the RSN AI training module as a component of our residents' education. That's great. I would also like to...
Simon, I have one more, my own dilemma to share it with the rest of the people here is as I'm going to the retirement age, what I'm finding is, what's the purpose of training residents, or what's the way to train residents? Is it to make them a protocol following, fill in the gap template doctors, or thinking and feeling doctors? That has been a dilemma. Now, more and more, I'm training people to fill up the, follow the protocol and fill in the gap in a template, rather than a thinking and a feeling physician. And that probably is a challenge. And the more we go with AI, as you rightly said, less and less thinking can happen. And that has to be incorporated in the AI tool. The AI tool makes the user think a bit. Yeah. That's the key issue. But if we decide that is not needed, we just want a warm body which follows the protocol and fills the gap in our report template, that's fine, in the sense, if that's the way to go, and that becomes the most cost-effective way of thinking. When every walk of society we are looking at the bottom line, that may be the way to go. So I don't say that. But so that's one thing to see, is every time I create a template for report, and I'm always thinking how this template will make the resident think, or the young doctor think. It's a tough task, and I've not found a good way of doing it yet.
So this is a really interesting insight. And what we have realized is that radiologists or imaging experts, for that matter, we have these different ways, and we have been looking very carefully at the reporting aspect, not only at the imaging and the diagnostic aspect, pre-screening or the screening aspect, but also the report writing aspect, where we see that the maximum amount of time after interpretation is spent in writing the reports. And what we realize is that there could be two different schools of thought. There could be reports which are structured reports, and there are reports which could be unstructured with the positive findings getting mentioned first. And then there's a third, which is a template-based reporting, where a template is already there, which ensures that not a single point is missed. We have seen conditions where we typically miss mentioning about gallbladder or a renal stone, for that matter, or some important organs, just because it was not in a templatized structure, or we are doing the scans and they're very thin images, and going through all of them, you have zoomed in and magnified and you have missed the corner. So any of these happen, and there's no real correct answer for this. But I certainly feel that following a structure or a template based approach is the best, I believe, because even for students, or even for us, for me, at the same time, I feel that if I follow that, it's less likely that I'm going to miss mentioning something else. For example, there's a small injury at some particular corner of a knee joint or somewhere. There is a posterior lateral or posterior medial complex. For that matter, I'm sure that I'm going to mention that in my report, because that's a part of my checklist. At some point of time, I may forget if I would not have had that checklist in front of me, and I'm following a structured reporting template. But I also see a completely separate school of thought, like there's a complete opposition to structured reporting and template as more. There's always a positive findings first, and the reports could be very brief at the same time. So the idea is that there has to be versatility in the system. There could be in a large hospital or network, you could have all these different schools of thought, and the platform or solution should be able to be versatile enough to give all these options. And that's where the real use cases, that's where this versatility will come into play, and gives the flexibility for not only their teachers and trainers, but also for the students to choose what works best for them. And that's how the future will be decided.
Very good point. Dr. Kharat, one more question from Dr. Humayun Bashir. Thanks for the very good talk and discussion. I recently met a fresh medical graduate considering not to opt radiology/imaging as a specialty because it will be taken over by AI. What are your thoughts about this?
Interesting question, and I kind of keep getting asked this question many times, and every 6 months, my also thoughts and vision keep on changing.
It's evolving, so that's good.
As if you asked me, if you would have asked the same question 6 months back, I would not have said the same thing. What would I speak today? Because as we know, as we speak, the chat GPT got launched and OpenAI came into picture. And the way OpenAI generates radiology reports, it is as good as the radiologist, right? Or the expert. So that means they basically means the entire landscape is changing. And but at the same time, I clearly see that radiologists are unlikely to be replaced very soon, or any imaging experts. I still feel that it's a long journey. And for the future, what I also see is that there's an implosion in the amount of imaging which is happening. Whether the kind of, we know that the number of people who are currently served with the existing medical imaging equipments is not sufficient enough. And at the same time, we are also seeing that the imaging equipments are also getting miniaturized. So there is a reach of these imaging equipments have increased because of the miniaturization. Because of the demand supply, we are clearly seeing there's a huge demand. We are not able to match the supply because of various reasons. It could be cost, it could be various other reasons as well. And that probably we believe in the next few years, this may change. This will again result in implosion. Plus every machine, the kind of data sets it is generating is sub-millimeter. The time required for imaging a PET CT, we all know. The time required for imaging scans and comparative scans, we all know. And if at all the workforce reduces further, you can imagine the challenge on the existing workforce. So it's not that the AI is coming, it will only work as a virtual assistant. The final sign-off will be done by an expert, and experts will be required, and experts' journey will continue. And it may probably open up new opportunities in this space completely. And so that's how we see it changing.
A couple of comments on that. Amit, first of all, fantastic talk. Loved it, and love that you put a different spin on things, because we usually don't think about these things. So I'm glad. I still remember looking at your PhD thesis as an external examiner a long time back. So I'm proud that you have come a long way from where you were just a few years ago, actually. So awesome progress in AI and all that. But coming back to being replaced by AI, I think there's a lot of insecurity in general in people's minds, because they're not sure about themselves, or they're not sure about their own strengths. We have been kind of using AI for a long time in nuclear medicine for different things. Take, for example, nuclear cardiology, polar plots, and those reads. We've been using that for more than a decade, actually. And it still hasn't replaced the need for us to review the scans and give a final report. We've been using objective brain analysis for brain PETs or brain specs, for seizure evaluation or dementia evaluation. And there are issues with the data sets that a lot of people are not familiar with. If they don't have and it goes back to your bias thing, if they don't have enough data so most of the data sets were made for dementia, and we use it for seizure evaluation, which happens in younger patients. People need to know that. Or for cardiac evaluation, a lot of data sets were not representative of the patient population you may be seeing, and people need to know that. So the data set, maybe we will be able to rectify, but there are certain things that I still have a hard time believing that AI will be able to solve. For example, altered biodistribution in an FDG scan, or artifacts or motion artifacts, and those kinds of things where you do require a human QA QC to check off on things. So I still think that there will be a role for imaging specialists. AI would actually make their life useful.
Yeah.
Yes, if you're an average or a poor reader, you are at risk of getting sidelined. But I still think decent people and good readers will actually thrive in the new AI environment. For example, as you touched on, that reporting takes up a lot of time. When we report an FDG PET CT scan, we're basically giving them almost a free CT read without getting paid for it. And if there is a structured AI thing that would pick up all the CT findings that are ancillary, not FDG avid, and creates a report for us by the time we read, we can just look at the images quickly and make sure it's got everything that's of relevant and move on. So that would make our reporting time for PET CTs much shorter, and would definitely be much more beneficial. So I look at it as, and that again, sometimes MBA training is useful. You can look at threats and opportunities and SWOT analysis and look at every difficulty as an opportunity rather than a threat, and see where you can improve, because the end game should be better patient care, and better patient care not only is good outcomes, but also timely patient care. And if you're, I mean, at Emory, some of our MRI scans are backlogged by a few days, actually. Like the scan got done last week and still hasn't been read. So there, as you said, implosion. So there is a need for better solutions to have the scans read in a timely manner and in a good way. So I see potential for AI. Like we could triage things. Like AI will screen the images and will spit out a list that says, okay, these are the scans that have critical findings and they need to be read first. You can't wait 7 days to sign off on those reports, those kinds of things. So I see a lot of positive from AI. Yes, there are threats, but there are also lots of positives. One thing I would like to you to touch upon or give your thoughts on is use of AI in clinical research trials. How do you, any thoughts on that? Because I think that's going to be an interesting field as well, especially when we have, as you said, the PET CT scan time has decreased. Now we are getting PET CT scanners that are doing a whole body scan in a few minutes rather than half an hour. And you're going to have multiple data sets of different time points to analyze. And that's just going to be extremely time consuming. So I would be very interested in your thoughts on AI in clinical research trials, imaging related.
Absolutely. I think this is a very important use case. And in fact, a lot of AI will be consumed by for clinical research and trial, extensive amount for them, right from the platform to AI audits to results to actually using AI for follow-up analysis on PET CTs or CT scans becomes extremely critical, because now you can get all these objective analysis out of these scans based on the use case. And not only that, you can actually go far ahead in that. You can actually significantly save reader time. And as a result of this, you could save anywhere from weeks to months to a year as well. So based on how deep is the AI deployment into that particular drug discovery phase to kind of drug or research to kind of to market, basically, if you're looking at the entire phases, if you're looking where imaging core is involved, and of course, if you see AI role in right from the discovery to drug reaching the market, is itself can reduce the drug time to the market by a year or two. But if you just look at the imaging core itself, it's going to be humongous value, because it can actually give all these objective analysis, because now you're looking at a very niche area. Apart from looking for a particular finding, you may be looking at lung tumors or lung nodules or maybe liver lesions or lymph nodes, and now you're getting objective analysis, and that's going to be extremely critical for seeing whether there is a response to the node. And that's where it's going to bring in significant changes, a revolution, I would say. And in the next few years, you will see a lot of development happening in this space. But it's definitely going to reduce the time for drug to reach the market by a few years for sure.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kharat. We really appreciate you coming here and giving this talk. It's very, very well explained and very comprehensive, and we all learned a lot today.
It's my pleasure to be here, and look forward to interactions in the future. If any point I missed, do reach out to me. I'm always available. And
yeah, we'll definitely look for collaborations and see whether we can deploy your software for some collaborative studies here in the US. For those who don't know, Dr. Kharat is used to be a practicing radiologist. He was professor at one of the universities in Pune. He also had his own imaging center, and now he's moved full-time to AI actually. So he has walked both the paths. He knows the clinical challenges of a practicing radiologist, and he knows in depth about AI. So he would be a great person to collaborate, especially for people who are getting into AI or thinking about collaborating with AI. Even biomedical engineers or software engineers or developing AI products. I think that would be a great collaboration. And I really appreciate, Amit, you taking time to talk to us today.
My pleasure. And I've shared my email ID. If at all any help required at any point of time or any collaborations, would be very happy to reply back to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And with
Thank
that,
you.
I'll conclude the session. Have a great rest of the evening or day.
Thank you
you.
so much.
Bye.
Take care.